This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. A lot of news this week and a lot of things that we've been doing at Freedom Watch and I've been doing in my individual capacity. But of course, we were witnessing another dog and pony show this week up on Capitol Hill with regard to the corruption and injustice at the Justice Department and its FBI. And that hearing was chaired by Congressman Bob Goodlatte, who's the chairman of the so-called Judiciary Committee. I say so-called because, frankly, they've done little to nothing in decades up there. And we saw this dog and pony show, and we saw some tough questioning by Representative Jim Jordan and also by Trey Gowdy. He's trying to now look like he's really a conservative, and on top of it, after he's praised Mueller and after he's taken other actions which were inexplicable, like taking a dive on the Benghazi investigation. See, they all play both sides. They got to try to placate everybody. They are politicians. That's what they are. But I'm going to play a clip shortly on that hearing because it tells you where we're going, that it is just a dog and pony show, that the American people need to rise up. We need to do it for ourselves. We need citizens' grand juries. We need to indict Hillary Clinton. We need to indict James Comey. We need to indict Robert Mueller and his staff, including Weintraub or Steen or whatever his name is, with Rob Rosenstein. I'm getting confused with the Steens. Maybe I'll now pronounce it Frankenstein, because he's been obstructing justice here. He needs to go. He needs to be indicted for obstructing justice. The whole lot of them, and of course the Clintons and Obamas. But let's get back to what was being said on Capitol Hill this week by Bob Goodlatte after the fact. He did an interview with Bill Hemmer Friday morning. It's a disgrace. It tells you, the politics involved in this and why we, the American people, need to have citizens' grand juries. Support us at freedomwatchusa.org. We will be impaneling them in the next few weeks, and we will be indicting the criminals finally. We will then have them convicted, and then we'll have them sentenced, and then peacefully and legally we will undertake citizens' arrests. It's time that we did things the way it was done in the West. It's time that we do things the way it was done prior to the creation of the Justice Department on July 1st, 1870. We don't have a justice system. We don't have judges who will stand up for the rule of law and the Constitution, and we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about the pick for the Supreme Court of President Trump, Brett Kavanaugh, who I believe is unqualified. He has little to no respect for the Fourth Amendment. He's the front runner. It's kind of like a Academy Award run-up where he's getting publicity to try to get himself nominated for the Supreme Court. But my experience with Kavanaugh, though he is an attractive guy, he has a nice demeanor, he's young enough, he's about 47, he just isn't cut out for this. He's part of the Washington swamp and the establishment. And then we're going to talk about the attacks on conservatives and the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, and even reaction that I'm getting whenever I wear a Trump T-shirt or a jacket from the inauguration from people at my cleaners and at hotels I stay at. It's just unbelievable, the mood out there. And, of course, we know that there's been violence this week. It may have been stirred up politically or otherwise, but we're in for what I believe will turn out to be a revolution. I don't advocate violence, but I think that's probably where the nation is headed. So that's where we are. So let's roll the tape. Al's my producer, my excellent producer here at Radio America. And let's hear what Bob Goodlatte had to say a day after the hearings, which I thought was absolutely disgraceful.
Well, I got two things accomplished yesterday. First of all, a confirmation by the Deputy Attorney General of the United States that he agrees with the Inspector General's report that there were many, many missteps made by the FBI in the investigation.
You got to hear the entire interview here, which we're going to link to the blog that we get up here at Radio America and also at freedomwatchusa.org. It also goes out on YouTube. In fact, we're getting so many people to listen to the show that we're really having a very big impact, and I thank you all for that, for sharing the show when you get it on the blog, because it's not just the stations that we're on going on 40 stations around the country, but we also have to get this out on the internet because people need to hear it. Because what you hear at Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman is not just the news, but we're making the news. And also we say things that you can't say on Fox News. We say things that we tell it straight up because we're not trying to couch things to keep advertisers. We're trying to get the American people to understand just how grave the situation is in terms of the breakdown in our justice system. But let's just talk briefly about what went on Capitol Hill and the comments of Goodlatte. He's basically backing off, and he's saying missteps. Are we talking just missteps in terms of the crimes that were committed by the FBI, the crimes that were committed by the Justice Department, the crimes that were committed by the Obama deep state intelligence agencies, the crimes that were committed by the Clintons, by James Comey, and now by Robert Mueller in his illegal witch hunt of an investigation, which has nothing to do with his original mandate? Basically, if you listen to the rest of this interview, Goodlatte is kissing the behind of Rod Rosenstein. So you have to ask yourself the question now. Goodlatte's the head of the Judiciary Committee. What do they now have on him? What does the deep state have on Bob Goodlatte that he's now basically sugarcoating and watering down the gravity of the situation? So this is what happens in Washington. You see, it is a dog and pony show. Congress will never go the full distance. They don't even have the power to bring indictments. You've got a Justice Department, which is run by someone who puts his head in the sand, Jeff Sessions, because he too is under investigation by Mueller for alleged Russian collusion and obstruction of justice and God knows what else. And of course, you have an executive branch with President Trump, and he's preoccupied with Iran and North Korea, and he's getting, frankly, bad advice from his lawyers and advisors that he should not be more aggressive with regard to the Justice Department. I believe that the president has good instincts, but he's going to have to listen to his instincts, as he does frequently, and not of his advisors, who are all these establishment swamp creatures. He can order the Justice Department to release the information to Congress and to the American people that they're seeking about legal spying on the Trump campaign and otherwise. And he can also take some action with regard to mass surveillance. And let me get into the other big development this week, which is the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy, which opens up a seat that President Trump can now fill with a conservative, with someone who truly is a real conservative. Now, the front runner is alleged to be this judge by the name of Brett Kavanaugh. He's on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, and I've been in front of him a number of times. And most importantly, over the mass surveillance cases that I brought after Edward Snowden revealed that all of our cell phone communications were being obtained by Obama's NSA, and the NSA in general, because it was happening even under Bush and otherwise. Now, what's really troubling is I got two preliminary injunctions with a judge at the time who was acting in an honest way. He later turned. They have something on him, according to one of our whistleblowers, and that's Judge Richard Leon, who issued two preliminary injunctions enjoining the Obama NSA and the government from this mass illegal surveillance without probable cause, which can only occur if there's a crime that's likely to be committed or is being committed or there's terrorism afoot in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. Now, when that then triggered, because these were landmark decisions, that triggered Congress's passage of the USA Freedom Act, which was supposed to alleviate these abuses, but it didn't. We now know that the deep state intelligence agencies and the FBI have continued on unfettered doing mass illegal surveillance of the American people. We know that with regard to President Trump. We know it about the people around President Trump. Likely the Attorney General was caught in wiretaps in addition to all the other illegal surveillance because it goes beyond cell phone records. It goes into internet communications, social media. It's the whole gamut. Our government has everything on us. And it's an Orwellian state, Judge Leon ruled. Well, when that act passed, the Obama Justice Department came in and said, well, Klayman's cases are now moot. In other words, we have new legislation which resolves the issue. And I then took that up on appeal, and the Justice Department opposed that. And these very liberal judges on the panel that ruled upon this said, well, yes, the matter is now moot. They agreed with the Obama Justice Department. We don't need to proceed with these cases. and I'm going to vacate Richard Leon's order. Of course, the cases didn't stop, but at least those orders were vacated, not at least, but terribly they were vacated, because I thought this would be a protection for the American people, because I knew that these intelligence agencies were going to continue to violate the law. To make the long story short, when that ruling came out by the appeals court, the D.C. Circuit, I then went back to the 9 judges. This was a 3-judge panel and said, reconsider it. We need to leave Judge Leon's orders in place. They, of course, didn't. They were not. Most of the 9 are all leftists and people that don't really believe in civil liberties but the power of the government. This is the deep swamp here in Washington. But Judge Kavanaugh wrote an opinion, which he didn't have to write, which was gratuitous, which frankly, procedurally was illegal. And he wrote an opinion saying that this mass surveillance was fine. It wasn't a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So the bottom line is this. President Trump do not appoint Brett Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court justice. He doesn't respect the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. And he's doing a public relations campaign right now like they do in the days leading up to the Academy Awards when actors want to get the award. This is, in fact, it's a sell. It's Kool-Aid on the American people. And let me just conclude by one other thing, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. These attacks on conservatives that are going, Sarah Sanders, Kirsten Nielsen, myself, others, they need to be remedied. So I urge you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for our citizens' grand juries. We need to bring about justice. We cannot be afraid. We have to pursue it and bring our nation back to liberty and freedom, just as our founding fathers did in 1776 and in successfully fighting the war against the British Crown. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. Join our Freedom Watch Justice League or Citizens Army, whatever you want to call it, because we, the American people, need to do it for ourselves. You can listen to Bob Goodlatte. It's a joke up there on Capitol Hill. It's a dog and pony show. I'm going to be right back with Congressman Bob Barr, former congressman and former U.S. attorney from Georgia, to get his thoughts on what's been going on.
Dangerous.
You don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with former Congressman Bob Barr, former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. As I've said many times, we've had him on this show. He's a great friend. He's a great patriot. He's the only one on Capitol Hill I could ever trust in my entire career as a freedom fighter, Judicial Watch, and now Freedom Watch, because Bob actually put his money where his mouth is. And he was the one that introduced articles of impeachment. I worked with him in that regard. Others did, like Howard Phillips of the conservative movement and people that we knew in various conservative groups. And Bob had the courage to do it. He had the courage to also try to get the House Judiciary Committee through impeachment to investigate Chinagate, Filegate, Travelgate, IRSgate, all the other gates. And Bob actually introduced, it was kind of like the way the Korean War started in a way, or at least the United Nations entered into that. He introduced it right before dinner, our impeachment report at Judicial Watch, and the Democrats were more interested in going off and having dinner than actually paying attention to what Bob was doing. And it made its way into the congressional record. That's kind of what happened when the UN played a role in the Korean War. I think the Russians were out drinking vodka at the time. But in any event, I introduce you to Bob Barr. I don't want to pontificate. I want to get his views on what's been going on Capitol Hill. I view it as a dog and pony show. We've now, Bob, had 25 years of experience at least of a lot of smoke and mirrors on Capitol Hill and in our judiciary, and we don't have justice with regard to the Clintons or people like the Clintons. So I want to get your thoughts on Bob Goodlatte and his band of merry men, so to speak.
Well, thank you, Larry. And by the way, I think many of the Republicans back during the impeachment days, when I introduced Judicial Watch's report into the official impeachment record, I think most of the Republicans were somnambulant, sleeping also. They didn't seem to be terribly interested, but I am glad that we got it in. So thank you for that introduction and those memories 20 years ago this year. What's going on the Hill with regard to the Mueller investigation, the failure by the Department of Justice to produce records properly and lawfully subpoenaed by the House Judiciary Committee, can be solved, I think, very easily if Congress just studied the history of the law, studied Supreme Court cases, and grew a backbone, because there is Supreme Court authority that has never been overruled going back to 1927 in a case, McGrain v. Doherty, and I've referred to it a number of times, that says that as long as a congressional committee is operating within its jurisdiction and a witness either fails to appear or fails to produce subpoenaed documents, the Congress, that is, in this case, the House Judiciary Committee, has the lawful authority then and there to have the sergeant-at-arms take that individual into custody, and they can be cited with criminal contempt. And the Supreme Court, in a 1927 case, upheld the authority of Congress to do that. Yet I doubt that there are very many, if any, members of the Judiciary Committee that have ever looked at that case. But the Congress has clear authority that is commensurate with that the executive branch has to hold a non-performing witness in contempt. The Congress has just the same authority within its jurisdiction, and yet they fail over and over again to exercise it. They let themselves be pulled around. They let the smoke be thrown up. The dog and pony shows and so forth. And, they bluster and they bluster, but nothing happens. They have the tools. They are simply failing to use them, Larry.
Well, and why is that, Bob? Because what they do, in my opinion, is that these dog and pony shows are to get them reelected, to get their conservative base ginned up on the Republican side, and to raise money to get reelected. And beyond that, they don't want to stick their neck out in this world of Washington, D.C., the swamp, whatever you want to call it, deep state, because the deep state has stuff on a lot of them. They've got dirt on them that will start flying out of files. It'll destroy their personal lives potentially and their professional lives. And that's the way I see it. And Goodlatte, this morning, I played a clip of his comments with Bill Hemmer on Fox News right after this hearing of yesterday, where Representative Jim Jordan, and Trey Gowdy came on strong with Rosenstein. And, of course, what do they do after the fact? Little to nothing. But Goodlatte looks like he's backing off. He calls what the FBI's been doing missteps, if you can believe that, only missteps. And then he starts praising Rosenstein at the end, that now he's getting great cooperation and that kind of thing, notwithstanding everything else that's going on with this illegal investigation with what's going on. So in any event, Bob, we're going to be back in the next segment here and talk more about this. I want to get your views on that. Stay tuned.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
We're talking about the dog and pony show in the House Judiciary Committee that occurred this week. And, Bob, I just kind of teed it up with my views. I want to get your views. But this whole idea of holding them in criminal contempt at the Justice Department and at the FBI for not turning over documents, they'll never have the guts to do that. And they know about the case, I'm sure. They just don't want to raise it because there'll be false expectations, and then, their voters will flee them like fleas from a dog. Actually,
it's amazing and it's disappointing, Larry, to see this not just year after year, but decade after decade, the way modern Congresses fail to follow up with the tools that are available lawfully to them. Most of these witnesses, as a matter of fact, they're really good witnesses, and we saw 2 of them yesterday. Very good witnesses know that all they have to do if they are dragged before the Congress is to sit there and be beat up on for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or half a day, whatever it is, and then they can sort of wipe their brow, go back to their office, and tell their staffs, we withstood that. We don't have to worry because there will never be any follow-up. It's follow up, follow up, follow up. That's the way you get things done in Washington, in business or in campaigns. That's what I always told my campaign staff. You need to follow up, follow up, follow up with our volunteers. On the Hill and in the executive branch, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they know that very, very few members of Congress will ever follow up on anything, so they don't have to worry. In this case, as I mentioned in a previous segment, Congress has the tools that have withstood challenge to the Supreme Court to hold an individual in criminal contempt if they fail to either appear pursuant to lawful subpoena or to produce documents lawfully subpoenaed within the jurisdiction of a House or Senate committee. That is the case here, but they have failed to follow it. They have failed to use that tool. The other tool, of course, that the Congress has that they also are failing to use, Larry, is the appropriations tool. All they have to do is pass an appropriation rider restricting and limiting the funding for the Department of Justice so that Rosenstein's office or Mueller's office or whatever office is investigating and has jurisdiction for what is going on here be stopped. Now, I'm presuming that Trump would sign it. Maybe he wouldn't, but I hope that he would. But Congress has failed to apparently even consider using, the one tool that it has that everybody understands, and that is the appropriations tool. They just fail to use the tools that are available to them over and over and over again.
You're right, Bob, and that, of course, begs the question, why is it they fail to do that? What's your opinion? Why won't they take strong action?
A lot of them don't have the backbone to do it. Many of them don't understand the tools. Some of them want to work their way up through leadership, and they know that if they go against leadership, which, of course, likes the status quo, which is the strongest force, the most powerful force in the universe, the force of the status quo, the leadership likes the status quo. Individual members know that if they go against it, if they do something that the leadership doesn't like, then that will limit or perhaps ruin their chances of moving up in the party leadership in the House or the Senate. Also, most members perhaps, particularly those that are getting close to retiring or not running for re-election, have one eye on where I'm going to go after I leave the Congress, so I don't want to upset the folks out there that I'm going to be working with or going to as clients. And it is, as you indicated, it's a real swamp. And one Congress after another, Democrat or Republican, seems to fit the same mold, unfortunately.
And don't be fooled. I mean, you can hear good comments that we think are good by Trey Gowdy, or you can hear them by Jim Jordan or whoever. In Gowdy's case, he took a dive on Benghazi. He was in that committee. He exonerated Hillary Clinton. That's absurd. I've got a court case going up to the Supreme Court right now for wrongful death against Hillary Clinton. And he's going back, obviously, into private practice. Probably a large Washington, D.C. law firm paying him millions of dollars per year. And it's undoubtedly because this is Washington, D.C. law firms. They have Democrats and Republican partners. They cover all sides. And, yes, he's positioning himself for leaving Congress. So, yes, he sounds good right now, but no action, okay, by any of these characters. Back in 1992, and, of course, you're a scholar of the law, Justice Antonin Scalia wrote an opinion in a case called United States versus Williams. I've written about it, that the grand jury does not belong to any of the branches of government. It belongs to the American people. And he pointed out that we didn't even have a Justice Department until July 1st, 1870. In the old days, in the West and elsewhere, people used to mete out justice through citizens. I'm going to impanel a citizens' grand jury in a few weeks. I'm trying to find the best place to do that. We'll pick the grand jurors from voter rolls neutrally. We'll see if we can get a retired judge or someone to serve as a judge over the grand jury. I will seek indictments of Hillary Clinton, of Comey, of Mueller, of the deep state and intelligence chiefs, John Brennan and James Clapper, and others and Rosenstein, and for that matter, others who have obstructed justice. I hope to convict them and also to do it in a defensible way, to have them sentenced, and then to have citizens undertake peacefully and legally citizens' arrest. Now, will these people turn themselves in? No. Maybe we can find a judge who will enforce the sentence. Who knows? But at least it makes a point of what's going on in this country. And we do have the power to make change. And this is what we did beginning in 1776. It's what we did for 100 years thereafter. We, the people, exercised our own legal system because, in my view, we don't have a legal system today. And these elites walk off. They're cocky. That's why Rosenstein can be a wise guy in front of the House Judiciary Committee. You're right, because he knows nothing will happen to him and others. Anyway, that's my view, Bob. And, what else do we do if not citizens' grand juries?
It's a very interesting concept, Larry, one that is close to totally alien, I suppose, to the people in Washington. Heaven forbid that the citizens of this country would actually be empowered to hold government accountable. But it is something that was a fundamental underpinning of our entire system of government, that it is the people who are empowered to and to control government. Yet these bureaucracies have grown up on the Hill in the executive branch. The judiciary has largely become the ultimate arbiter that approves what government does. Very rarely will the federal courts, step in and stop the government from performing abusive acts. They do occasionally, certainly, but not nearly enough. And when you have a system where, in the case of the Congress, where they have tools that are available to them, yet they simply refuse over and over again to use those tools to hold government accountable or to even get the information to which the Congress itself is lawfully entitled, and all you have is a bunch of, shouting and gnashing of teeth and a bunch of dust churned up at the hearings, and then nothing happens. Maybe it is time for the citizens to take the matter into their own hands. So I think it's a very interesting and worthwhile concept.
Thank you, Bob. Hopefully you'll join us, because you're one of the few courageous people in this country that will stick his neck out. That's why we're good friends, as a matter of fact. And here's another thing. You've got Jefferson writing back after the Revolution, that our founding father, I think our greatest founding father, our third American president, that he thought that we would need a revolution every other generation. He knew we were going to get to this situation. He knew the people would have to rise up. So it's not something that Larry Klayman conceived of, or Justice Antonin Scalia, may his soul rest in peace, alluded to, but it's something which was viewed to be likely to happen sometime in our future. And I think we've arrived at this point in time. And you were talking about judges. And, I'll let you conclude this with that, because you've had a lot of experience. You were U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. You're still a practicing lawyer. We've worked together on matters. These judges come up in an establishment way, okay? They have to say and do the right things, not just to be a Supreme Court justice, but to be a district court judge or a DC or a circuit court judge on the appeals courts. You cannot offend. You have to curry favor with the establishment, or you'll never be nominated. So they're not courageous people, by and large. In fact, quite the contrary. They go along to get along. And that's why we're now in the situation we are. So what do you think about my comments about judges?
I think that they do come up through the system, by and large, at the district court level, and then, of course, that is the pool from which courts of appeals judges are chosen, and that is the primary pool from which Supreme Court justices ultimately are chosen. Yet even when we have justices on the Supreme Court that seem to have the courage and do have a solid understanding of what the Constitution means and how it must be interpreted today according to the very clear views of our founders, justices such as we saw just the other day with the case on upholding the Trump immigration authority, which I think was a correct decision. The president clearly had authority to issue the orders that he did with regard to immigration a year and a half ago. Yet the majority opinion by the court shied away from the key issue in the case, which Justice Clarence Thomas identified in his opinion, and that is you have these very liberal judges, oftentimes, of course, in the Ninth Circuit in Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, and California, that the liberal lawyers will go to get an injunction, and then the judge will make it nationwide, give it nationwide effect, and that's simply for political reasons. And Justice Clarence Thomas said this is highly improper, and it is infecting our judicial system, and it has to be stopped. Yet the majority opinion failed to really to include that in its majority opinion. So here again, the Supreme Court had a perfect opportunity to reassert the proper role of the judiciary and slap the hands of these liberal judges at the district court and appellate court levels that are issuing politically motivated injunctions and decisions and saying by fiat, we're going to make this apply nationwide. So
well, you know what, Bob?
When even here with the Supreme Court, they're not using the tools and standing up for the proper rule of law.
Right. At a minimum, a judge's decision at the lower court level should just apply to that district, of the
Absolutely.
country. And a circuit court's decision, say like the Ninth Circuit, only that circuit. It shouldn't extend nationwide. And see, the problem is, and I believe this, I love Justice Clarence Thomas. He's the best justice, I think. But they are establishment creatures on the court. And I'm writing a column today for WND.com about Brett Kavanaugh. I've appeared in front of him in the D.C. Circuit. He has little to no respect for the Fourth Amendment. He said the mass surveillance was fine when a matter came up in front of him when we enjoined the NSA under Obama twice. And I don't think he's qualified or suitable to become a Supreme Court justice. He is an establishment creature. And that's what we deal with on the judiciary. It's why we, the American people, as we both put it, need to take matters into our own legal hands. And it's time that we mete out justice because, Washington, D.C., and I'm here frequently about half the time, just this evil cloud hanging over it. I don't like the place anymore. I'm here because I have to be, but I hope to restore it like you do to that shining city on a hill. And only the American people can do it. We cannot look to Congress to do it. So I hope people will go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, join Freedom Watch's Justice League. I'm calling it that. We don't have anybody that looks as good as Gal Gadot, but on the other hand, we're pretty strong. We do have Wonder Women, however, and Wonder Men working with us, our patriots. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Bob, thank you for your thoughts. You are a real patriot, and I can't say it enough. You're the only congressman I've ever known who actually did what he said he was going to do.
I tried to do what the Constitution demanded of me, and I appreciate your support. And you mentioned your organization, and ours is Liberty Guard, so we do work also in this arena. So between our organizations, and there are several others out there, not enough, but several others that really fight for freedom in a constitutional sense, we need to keep fighting.
Thanks, Bob.
How difficult it is.
We're out of time, but obviously I'm going to have you back. You're my patriot in arms, legal arms. God bless you.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We heard former Congressman Bob Barr, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, great patriot, my colleague, my friend, endorse the citizens' grand juries. We have to do it. We have to do it peacefully and legally. We really need your help. You see, and this is the difference between Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch today, is that Judicial Watch gets documents. Okay, documents are nice. You can get, it's like playing cards. You can get cards. You can play the cards. But it's how you play with those cards that count. And that's what I'm doing and others are doing at Freedom Watch. We just don't get documents, and we're going to get some important documents in about 2 months dealing with Mueller's communications with the media, which will likely show grand jury leaks, which are criminal, which may lead to his demise, likely would if, in fact, documents are produced honestly and fully. But I'm not relying on that because you're relying on the Justice Department to produce documents. You're relying on the FBI to produce documents. You're relying upon the Office of Special Counsel under Mueller to produce documents. Okay, documents, Tom Fitton can get himself on the air and, pontificate and pound his chest like King Kong. I'm great. I got documents. But that's not going to do it at Judicial Watch today. We need to go a separate step, and we need courageous people working with Freedom Watch and with others to take matters into their own legal hands, to mete out justice, to restore our country to the vision of our founding fathers, short of a violent and bloody revolution, as Jefferson predicted would happen. We don't want to see it happen. Time is short. So I asked you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. Join Freedom Watch's Justice League. We're going to get that up. I'm changing the name from Citizens Army to Justice League because I watched Wonder Woman on the plane 2 weeks ago. And I said, hey, this is a great idea. We've got, I'm not saying I'm Superman. I'm not saying we have a Wonder Woman. I'm not saying we have the Flash or Aquaman. Okay, we've got something better than that. We've got real life characters who are trying to beat out justice. And we want you to join us in that quest. And it's a great way also to bring in younger people to get them to understand that in some ways we're pop culture, but we're pop culture that's trying to do something for this country. We can make it very, very attractive for younger people to join our cause, because the millennials in this country, a lot of them they're kind of out of step. They're texting all day long. Some of them live in their parents' basements. Not all of them, are clueless. There are some that actually know what's going on. I know sometimes when I go to conservative events, I meet some really bright and enlightened young people that are coming up, but there's not enough of them. They're the small minority. So we need to educate the American people. You need to not only donate, because we are small, we need more resources. We need to hire more people. We need to pay for these citizens' grand juries. We need to bring about justice. So we need your contributions, but we also need your support. We need your prayers. Sign up so you can get our newsletters. One's going out today. Sign up so you can get other things that we send out. I've got a compilation of all the columns I've written over the years called Essays of a Mad Man, M-A-D-M-A-N, 2 words. So if you donate over $100, you can get that free. And I think it chronicles the history of this country from the Clinton administration on, which shows you the downward slide. You need to understand the full extent of the breakdown in our government and legal systems. You need to understand the establishment that's trying to destroy anybody who will say what he thinks and do what he thinks is right. And that happens. It happens not only with the courts. It happens not only in Congress. It happens not only in the executive branch outside of President Trump. He's not in control of everything. It happens in bar associations that try to eliminate lawyers who stick their neck out from making a change in this country, if it's conservative or if it's libertarian, because these bar associations are highly leftist, generally speaking. And they're pro-Clinton, they're pro-Obama, they're pro a lot of things. So we're up against a lot of forces. And we saw this week what happened to Press Secretary Sarah Sanders getting run out of the restaurant, the Red Hen. We saw what happened to Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen, who was just trying to have dinner at a Mexican restaurant. Shows she actually has an appreciation for Latin food and culture. This country's coming unglued, and we need to stand up, and we cannot be afraid. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join Freedom Watch's Justice League. Join us in our quest for citizens' grand juries. We will bring about justice. I will indict the criminals. I will hold them accountable. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and the rest of them. And we need your help, and we need your support. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. God bless you. God bless America. And God save America. And we will get the job done. You can count on Larry Klayman.